So FPL Game Week 23 is here and the pressure is cranking up, with the urge to sign Bruno Fernandes rising by the minute and the potential Game Week 24 wildcard playing on people's minds. And I'll be honest with you, like I always am, I do not think that Game Week 24 wildcard is the right play, but I know as we get closer the urge to activate will reach fever pitch. And I also know that my best chance of achieving my goals this season is to hold on until Game Week 32 and to enter that late wildcard with 5 free transfers in the bank. So today I am going to show you the Nightmare Manifesto and to explain how to get to Game Week 32 without activating that wildcard or wasting my free transfers. And I am doing this for 2 reasons. 1, because I think it might help you when it comes to formulating your own strategy, and 2, because I need to hold myself accountable and laying the plan out like this is the best way to do so, and to stop myself from slipping back into those old nightmare ways. If I want different outcomes, I have to do things differently. It is that easy and that difficult, and hopefully this video keeps me on the path that I have chosen to walk. So we will get straight into it, and I know a lot of you think, bloody hell Nightmare, why did you take that -8 last week? But as you see my score, I ended up with the green arrow, and now I have the squad ready for this run ahead. And it's a difficult run because what I'm intending to do is approach the Game Week 32 wildcard with 5 free transfers in the bank. And my team is a long way from optimal, but I'm going to show you today just how easy it is to get to that Game Week 32 wildcard without tearing up this team. I mean, in many ways I could actually get there without making all that many transfers, but I will have to make some transfers because otherwise I'll end up burning them. And it's how to use those transfers to the maximum potential. So if we look at Game Week 23 now, you can see I've got a very good squad. Yes, Haaland and Foden are issues, but at the same time, it is very difficult to bench someone this week for me. Now, if I look at it, I've got Tarkowski and Mukiele on the bench. I want to start both of them. They've both got great games. I could bench Foden and Haaland, both out of form. Will either of them play? Will we see Marmoush start? Will we see Shirky start? Who knows? We just don't know right now. But it's a possibility, especially when you hear how much Pep is talking about the Haaland exhaustion. I feel like what's going to happen is we'll see a lot of people flirt with the idea, and then as the deadline approaches, they're probably going to deviate back to the Haaland captaincy. Now, I don't want this video to be about captaincy, but this week, I think it's very tough. I mean, I look at my team, and I could go Gabriel again, but Bruno Fernandes. I am thinking of making that Foden to Fernandes switch like so many already have. And yes, it is not the optimum game for Bruno Fernandes. In fact, Arsenal away, it's the toughest game of the season. So bringing him in for that seems a bit madness. But at the same time, keeping Foden is not ideal either, because is he even going to play? If he does play, he's going to be subbed at half-time for a one-pointer. Why would I bench Tarkowski to play Foden when Tarkowski keeps outscoring Foden, keeps matching him at the very least? He always has that DEFCON potential. There's Mukiele as well, and his points predominantly come at home. But at the same time, West Ham is a nice fixture, and he also has the DEFCONs, which Foden does not do. So the idea of starting Foden over either of them I don't like. Bruno Fernandes I do, because you look at the goals Man United scored against Man City, the way that they were playing, that is a route to goals that could easily come in handy against Arsenal. If that Mbumo goal from that Fernandes assist, great on the counter, decisive, incisive, straight through the middle, one-touch football, great finish. You could see that against Arsenal. You're watching them against Forest. I saw bits of it against Forest, and you had Saliba and Gabriel. They were like 20, 30 yards from goal. They were really high. And to me, that's the sort of areas of the field that Man United could exploit. I feel that plays into Man United's hands a bit. And look, I do expect Man United to lose that match, but I do think they could get something, and if they do, Fernandes will likely be involved. So the other option I have is bringing in Fernandes, benching Mukiele and banking on Bowen to get the goal, or whoever, Callum Wilson. Come on, Cal. One last goal for this Geordie boy. And then maybe even benching Timber, who doesn't seem to have the same attacking threat at left back. I think he got an assist in Europe last night on Tuesday night. I'm not sure when I'll get this video out. But I don't think it's the same as when he plays right back. So if I expect Man United to score, I could just bench Timber and play Tarkowski there, bring in Fernandes for Foden, and that's fine. And also, I'm recording this before my beloved Newcastle play against PSV. Bruno Guimaraes gets injured. I could just bring in Bruno Fernandes for him and then bench Foden for Tarkowski, and the job's a good one. Either way, it's options. So I will be bringing in Fernandes for Foden, whether it's this week or next week, I do not know. And we look at next week, game week 24, it is a big wildcard week. If I haven't done it, I will definitely be doing Foden to Fernandes this week. My plan is to bench Hall and Guimaraes away at Liverpool, which means starting Mukiele at home to Burnley. It's beautiful. This is what that Guimaraes-Mukiele home rotation is all about. You can't help but see the points keep ticking up for that duo in this home rotation. And I've got one other transfer available. Could I do Ekitike out? Maybe. Wolves play Bournemouth at home. I could bring in Mane and play him over Ekitike and free up almost £4 million for the kitty. But also Mane could very well have a double game week as well, so that gets me an extra fixture in addition to freeing up those funds. The other option, of course, is Chelsea. They have a great run of games, and I'm struggling to get to Enzo or Cole Palmer in midfield. Obviously, I could do Ekitike to Palmer. Not really a priority for me, Cole Palmer. But Enzo, he's an interesting one, but I just can't quite get to him. But Joao Pedro or Liam Delap as a differential, that's a good option. Ekitike out to Joao Pedro. It could go big. It could be a disaster. We just don't know with those two. We see Delap, he is a bit of a loose cannon. We see Joao Pedro, a very streaky player. And I remember he often frustrated last season against the weaker teams and excelled against the better ones. So that is an argument not to get Joao Pedro. But it's an option. And if I want to engage in risk and I want to take on the field, that is a good option to do that. But the other problem is it keeps the money in the front line, and I do want to transition to a DEFCON daddy team. Apart from that, there's no need for any other transfers because the team is still grand, and I could even go with Ekitike because I do quite like his fixtures, so we'll see. And then after that, it's game week 25, and I have a terrible game week for attackers that week. I've got Haaland away at Liverpool, I've got Ekitike at home to Man City, and Thiago away at Newcastle. Apart from that, the team's fine, but that is not ideal. If I had done Ekitike to Joao Pedro, then he would have Wolves, but the problem is the Chelsea attack I find hard to predict. So, is it going to be Pedro? Is it going to be Liam Delap? Could it be, neither of them? Could Guiu make a rare appearance? I just don't know, and I'm not entirely sure I want to get on that roundabout. I feel there's a lot of points in that Chelsea attack over these fixtures. I just don't know where, and I don't know if that's what I want to engage in, because if I'm doing this plan, get to game week 32 wildcard with 5 free transfers, I need robust players. I need guaranteed players, and I don't feel like any of those Chelsea attackers offer that. Palmer has his issues. Enzo Fernandez, I keep reading rumours of Real Madrid, of Paris Saint-Germain. He'll probably stay till the summer, but if I bring him in and then he's sold, then I have to use a transfer to get him out, and then this plan goes down the Swanee. So I'm not entirely sure that's the best player. Now, what I could do is just make no transfers and start Haaland and Thiago, bench Ekitike against Man City. If Man City are still defending like they are, I might start him over one of the other two. But I could just go with the expected ownership play, protect myself from that damage with Thiago and with Haaland, and then bank on the rest of that team, you know, triple Arsenal against Sunderland, double Everton against Fulham, double Newcastle against Brentford, Fernandes against Tottenham and Dean Henderson against Brighton, and bank on, or even Dubravka against West Ham. I could bank on them to make up the points that week. Like, this is the thing. It's not a great week on paper, but not every week is going to be a great week. Sometimes you have to sacrifice for the bigger picture. It's like in a war, you can't save everyone's lives if you want to win. Trying to save everyone will end up losing everyone. So if I stick to the plan, then this might be a bad week for my team. But at the same time, it could be a week where the differentials come in and actually give me a little bit of an edge. Like this week, just gone, -8, low scoring week, green arrow. You know, it could be a week a bit like that. And then I move on to game week 26. Now, this is the possible double. And I've already got the best Arsenal trio in place, in my opinion. You know, I've got Timber, Gabriel and Declan Rice. For me, Gabriel is the obvious captain, and I may even triple captain him. Yes, it's 2 away games, but it's to Brentford and to Wolves. If he can keep 1 clean sheet and get 1 attack in return, you're looking at 20 points, 60 points. That's nice. You know, the other thing is if Man City make the final, it could end up with Man City having a great double game week later on. I'll just have a quick look. Brentford and Crystal Palace possibly mooted in game week 36 for Man City for Haaland. So, I mean, that's a nice one. But there's other trips to play. So it's if I can use a triple captain on Gabriel that week, Gabriel, who is matching Haaland points per game, Gabriel, who's in a great run of form, you know. And I talked a bit in my last video about the positional snobbery of not captaining Gabriel. And if you had Haaland against Brentford and Wolves in a double game week, you wouldn't be thinking twice about the triple captain. And Gabriel is matching him points for game, so why would it even be a debate? I don't know. But yeah, you know. And I mean, the other thing that week, the rest of the team is fine. On my plan, I've got Mukiele and Thiago benched. Yes, once again, I'm going against that Bruno Guimaraes and Mukiele home rotation. Now, I could start Mukiele over Lewis Hall. That is one possibility. But Liverpool at home is not an easy fixture. You've got to think 3 points is the ceiling unless Mukiele can get the assist like he did at the weekend. I don't know if I want to back that. But Newcastle away at Spurs, especially if Thomas Frank is still in charge, I would be backing that all day long. Because for all Newcastle haven't played well, you know, somehow we're in a cup semi-final, we're in another round of the cup, we're on the verge of qualifying for the Champions League knockouts, and we're 3 points off 4th. So, and we've got all that room for improvement. And, you know, we've got a good record against Tottenham, maybe not so much away, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it. So no need to make a transfer there. Either way, that game week is fine. I don't need a transfer. So I could then be at game week 27, and I've only done Foden to Fernandes. I've got 4 free transfers in the bank. My team has been fine the whole time. Good in some weeks. It's been, you know, maybe not so good in others, but it's been absolutely fine. Plenty of points on the board, and that's without Chelsea assets. You know, so it's not too bad. So game week 27, if I bench Hall and Guimaraes away against Man City, that team is absolutely fine. I could make a transfer, but then who do I bench? You know, I'm not really benching Arsenal against Tottenham. Look, I mean, I'm not benching, I know I'm talking about maybe doing it this week, but it's not in my agenda to bench any of my Arsenal players. There's things worth expending brain power on and energy, and benching the best players from the best team in the league does not seem worth my time in thinking about. They're the sort of team that can clean against anyone, and Declan Rice is that sort of big match player who can produce the goods against anyone. So I'm looking at the rest of the team, And it's hard. You know, I'm not benching Mukiele, Thiago, Ekitike, not benching Haaland or Fernandes. So the only real options are the Everton duo, and they're at home to Man United. And they are so good for DEFCONs with that 4-point baseline. You know, Ghana, if they can keep a clean sheet, you've got at least 5 points from Ghana, at least 8 points from Tarkowski. If Ghana can get a goal from his set-piece threat or an assist, maybe even for Tarkowski, you know, you're looking at them two players could get 25 points that week against Man United. It does not seem likely, but it's a possibility. So I'm not really keen on benching either of them. So there's no need to make a transfer that week, you know. And maybe Man United are scoring 5 goals a game by then, and I could bench Tarkowski. But even then, it's not essential, and it's a sort of game that Everton and David Moyes, against his old team, is very capable of keeping a clean sheet in. So I don't need a transfer then. And now I'm at game week 28 and I've got 5 free transfers, even after bringing in Fernandes in game week 23 or 24. And the whole time, the team has been fine. It's not been optimal, but it's been fine. Game week 28, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Double Everton away at Newcastle. Triple Arsenal against Chelsea. These are tough games. You know, I've got Mukiele on the bench. Maybe, for the reasons I stated earlier, I start Mukiele over Jurrien Timber. You know, that could be fine. Maybe I could do nothing and it'd be fine. But I must use at least one transfer because otherwise I start burning them, and that is not the way to get to game week 32. So what I'm actually thinking, assuming Arsenal do make the cup final, what I'm actually thinking is to use 2 transfers and go from Jurrien Timber to David Raya. Now, I know what you're thinking, but if I do that, just hear me out. If I do that, I do Timber to Nathan Collins of Brentford. That gets me Burnley, Bournemouth, Wolves, Leeds, Everton and Fulham from Collins, which is a dream run. That is the sort of fixture, you know, it's sort of fixture run he's just been on, and he's smashed in about 50 points in about 5 weeks, you know. So I've got that in mind. That is a time of the season I am going to be targeting Brentford, at least with Thiago in place already and probably Collins. And then the other thing is, if I bring in Raya, then in game week 31 I can field a full team without additional transfers. Because assuming it is a Man City-Arsenal final, I will have Raya, Gabriel, Rice and Haaland blanking. So that covers the bench. So that covers the bench and gets me 11 players on the field. Now, if Newcastle get there, now I can sell Hall for Collins instead, and also Bruno Guimaraes for Kevin Schade, which means I can attack that Brentford fixture run, and I'd lose the Newcastle double up for a trio of games, which is Man United, Chelsea, and then a blank fixture. It's not the worst run to miss. So the good options, you know, these are good options for a double transfer in game week 28. And that brings me back to 4 transfers in game week 29 because I'll be rolling 3, gaining another, and the team looks grand. Again, there's some real selection dilemmas because you look at that team, I've got Mukiele and Ghana on the bench, so there's no need to make transfers. If I've got a team like that, I don't need to be thinking who to sign. So again, roll the transfer, game week 30. Now, this is a bit tougher. And I've done this one based on the assumption it's an Arsenal-Man City final. I've got Newcastle away to Chelsea and Everton away to Arsenal. And I need to make a transfer because I'm up to 5. So if Lewis Hall is still in my team, that is an obvious sell in game week 30. In game week 30, Bournemouth play Burnley and Palace play Leeds, which are great fixtures for Senesi and Munoz. So that's an easy transfer from Lewis Hall to one of them. Probably Senesi, given that Munoz will blank in game week 31. Perhaps, probably. You know, you've got to play the percentages. But by then, I'll know. So, you know, I can make my mind up. Senesi is cheaper though, and he gets a DEFCON, so I'm happy with that. But if I look at the fixture runs from now until game week 32, from next week, Newcastle play Liverpool, Brentford, Tottenham, Man City, Everton, Man United, Chelsea and Sunderland. That is not a fixture run to target. Over that time, Bournemouth and Palace both have delightful fixture runs, and Senesi and Munoz could easily match or exceed Lewis Hall. And also we have to factor in the return of Big Dan Burn, and that could affect Lewis Hall's minutes. I don't think it should, because Lewis Hall transforms the Newcastle team, and Big Dan Burn is 6'7", he's 33, and he is not a left back. He is emergency cover. But we know Eddie Howe loves him. And could we see a back three system, perhaps? Could we see Hall rested at an inopportune time, perhaps? So, again, I've got to factor in the minutes, I've got to factor in the robustness. I suppose I can always just trust Hall, and then if he is benched, I can reassess then, because I've got those options. But at the same time, I could be proactive. So we'll see. So, should I wait until game week 30, or should I make the move in game week 24? Because I do only have one transfer planned over the next 2 weeks. Well, that is something to consider, because, you know, Senesi could easily beat Hall by a point a week on DEFCONs. Well, Lewis Hall's ticking over quite nicely, so I don't really want to sell him. I fancy Newcastle this weekend too, so we're playing Villa, and Villa have just lost that Boubacar Kamara, and I read somewhere that is Villa's results are much weaker without Kamara, so that, you know, that's a nice optimistic thing for Guimaraes and Lewis Hall, but we'll see. So anyway, we then get to game week 31, and I've got the full team, you know, assuming it's Arsenal, Man City, I've got Raya, Gabriel, Rice and Haaland on the bench. If it is Newcastle in the final instead of Man City, I've only got Bruno Guimaraes in my team, so I'll be starting Haaland over Guimaraes. And again, that's not so bad. And the rest of it is fine. You know, it's not ideal fixtures, but 11 players and a blank game week is fine. And the thing is, that transfer that I'll have to spend, because I've got 5, I'll have to spend that transfer. That transfer doesn't have to be spent in game week 31. I can use that any time. That one spare transfer, I can use it any time between now and game week 31 and end up with a full team in game week 31 and still have 5 free transfers after that game week 32 wildcard. Now, based on the current prices, when I've been making this plan on FPL Team, I've got $1 million spare, just over $1 million spare to ensure I can afford them. But I would rather not hit that threshold in the planning, in the transfers, if I go early with that spare one, because I don't want to be panicking about the later moves. So could I use that spare one on a Chelsea player? You know, this week, I could bring in someone this week, get Fernandes next week. I could do Lewis Hall to Chalobah, and then I could do Chalobah to Senesi later, or to Munoz or whoever. That is an option. I could do Bruno Guimaraes to Enzo Fernandez, and then maybe Enzo Fernandez to Sade later on, if I've got the transfer. You know, that's a possibility. There's a lot of options. You know, I could do Ekitike to Joao Pedro and just roll with it. And if Pedro misses out or he's poor, you know, I've got the subs. There's options. But, you know, if I do get to game week 30, I feel like the best play is to save that spare transfer. You know, I've got 5 transfers to use between now and 31. I've booked in your man Bruno Fernandes. I've booked in the other ones. I've got 1 spare. Now, I should save that one in case of an emergency, and I do think that's probably the best move, which means no Chelsea for my team, and that's fine, you know, because you've seen, obviously Chelsea could get points, but like I say, the rotation, the selection, we just don't know. and they're playing in Europe, and we just don't know. We don't know who's going to play. We don't know what's going to happen in the transfer market, and Chelsea are always a bit of a basket case in that. So when you talk about engaging in risk, I do feel that is a big risk, but it's one that could pay off, and it wouldn't surprise you if it did. So I could just save the transfer, and then if I do get to blank 31, obviously in my team, now you can see it's got Sean Longstaff in. Like, I don't know how Sean Longstaff's still in my squad. Like, he's been injured for about 2 months, but just never had the need to sell him. He's like my little mascot, Super Shawnee Longstaff. Maybe he comes in against Brentford in game week 31 and he somehow gets a goal and an assist, and it just looks like some sort of master plan. Who knows? But what I could do is, I'll have the money spare then. I could just do Longstaff to Harry Wilson at home to Burnley, or even the emotional play of Harvey Barnes, Longstaff to Harvey Barnes for that Newcastle-Sunderland derby. There's options. And I don't need to decide in game week 23 what I'm going to make in 31. And then obviously in game week 32, hit the wildcard button. And then in game week 33, it's looking lovely. 5 free transfers, a free hit to play, a bench boost to play, possibly the triple captain if I don't go on Gabriel in game week 26. And this is what it's all about for me, because I might lose points over the next 9 game weeks, but I might not. I might stay in the hunt. I've made up a bit of ground this week when everyone thought I'd lose out. So I might, if I can stay in that hunt, if I can be, around, if I can get up to 500,000 by game week 32, it's not against the realms of possibility. Might be a challenge, but if I engage in the right risk and it comes off, then it's every chance. If people keep captaining Haaland and he keeps blanking and I go against him, there's every chance. Like I say, I've not looked at captaincy on this plan, because when you're going against Haaland, you have to think, and you have to base it game week by game week. You can't be planning it too far in advance. So we'll see. But if I can get up to 500,000, even 750, if I can get to 750k and I've got 7 game weeks with a wild card, a bench boost, a free hit, maybe a triple captain, and 5 free transfers, I can absolutely attack. And I already talked on the walking video. People say, you're wasting the bench boost because you've got all these plans, but you're going to have all your money on your bench. Well, I won't need to, because I could keep Garner. I could bring in keep Mukiele, and I could bring in, Senesi or Joaquin Anderson or whoever at that time. And for £13 million, I'll have 3 DEFCON daddies on the bench. And if they double, I'm not sure. Obviously, it'll all depend on how the FA Cup shakes down. But if I can get 3 DEFCON daddies on that bench, 2 defenders and a midfielder, it's not hard. It isn't hard to do that for a very low price. And if they can play twice, because it's not about having 15 players doubling, it's about having if I can get a bench that doubles, that's cheap, that are DEFCON daddies, because if, Arsenal have a single game week, and I'm not gonna bench them, am I? So if I can get, or, if I bench Gabriel, then it's, that's a fine week anyway. But if I've got those 3 DEFCON daddies on the bench and they're playing twice, and they hit DEFCONs in both games, that's 24 points from those players on the bench boost. And then the goalkeeper as well. If I can find a keeper to keep a clean sheet and play twice, or even just play once and keep a clean sheet, that's 30 points. A keeper playing once with a clean sheet and 3 DEFCON daddies getting 4 points a game for 2 games, that's a 30-point bench boost. And I've not really had to do all that much or invest all that much money on my bench to do that. So that is the plan. And like I say, 5 free transfers to really attack that running, to weigh up the differentials, to weigh up where I am in the field and how I can make up the most ground. Because I I know it sounds daft, but I still think I can get top 100k, and I need to chase it. And 9.8 million overall rank to the top 100k would be a sensational season. It would be a sensational outcome. It would be a sensational story. And I am a storyteller. And that is a story I wish to tell this season. And I'm trying to give myself the best chance. And that plan is the one I feel does that. It might not work. It might go wrong. I might get royally punished in the next 9 game weeks and then pick all the wrong players on Wildcard. I might end up 3 million. We don't know. But what if it goes right, dear reader? What if it goes right? That's what I've got to believe in. It's a good plan. But my problem is I've come up with so many good plans this season and I've not stuck to them. I've reacted to events. I've reacted to the panic. And I feel like I might do that next week if I'm not careful, because I'm thinking, oh, I've got the money. I could do Longstaff to Enzo Fernandez and I could bench boost. And that sorts out that selection dilemma. And I don't want to do that. I want to give this plan a chance to work, because I want to win the game next season. And to do that, I have to do different things. And this is a perfect opportunity to engage in a different style of playing FPL and to trust a plan over the long term, over 16, 17 game weeks, and see if it works out and see what I can do with that. So that is my plan. And you might not like it and you might think it's a bad plan, but it is my plan. And that is what I am going with. So hopefully on Sunday, we'll be doing a nice walk rather than one of my shed rants, although I am sure you'd all love a shed rant. All I can say is, I hope you have a great game week. Thank you for watching and we will see you next time.